All right, welcome everybody. Hopefully you guys did good at slope. It's going to take some time, but I want to talk about another word called intercept. And you can think, what does it mean to intercept? You can think of, maybe I heard that word in football, and that means really to take away the pass from the other team or to cross paths with the ball and the receiver. So I want you to think about that and look at this line on this graph. Where does this red line intercept the y-axis? I can find it. I just need my pen right here. And it looks like it crosses right here. That's called the Y-intercept. And that's super important because you're going to be using that for a long time. I'm just going to put that over in my chart. That point is called 0, 3. And the important thing for today's lesson is anytime you're looking for the Y-intercept, the X value will always be 0. Okay, so Y-intercept. Okay, let's look at this next page. Just as a quick review, what is the fancy name for the x-coordinate? Do you know? I remember. It is called the domain. And what is the fancy name for the y-coordinate? Do you remember? It's called the range. And how can you tell if a relation is a function? Remember all those different ways that we talked about last week? Well, a relation is just a set of ordered pairs. And a function, well, if each domain has exactly one range, remember the number machines? If each x has a unique y, or you could graph it and see if it passes the vertical line test. So let's look at these three number machines and see, or we can call them functions, remember? And see if we can find the pattern. Can you find the pattern here? How do we go from x to y, x to y, x to y, and x to y? How do I go from 0 to 1? And using that same pattern, how do I go to 2 to 3? And I think you probably guessed it. All you have to do is, looks like I'm adding 1 here. This one, how do I get from -2 to -4, -1 and -2, 0 to 0 and 1 to 2? If I added, I can't add anything to get from 0 to 0. So it's not adding and subtracting. It's probably something with multiplication. And how do I get from 2 to 4 first? It looks like I'm multiplying by 2. And if I go -2 times 2, I do get -4. -1 times 2, I do get -2. So the pattern here is multiplying by 2. But this one is a little bit trickier. To go from -1 to -5, that would be subtracting 4. But to go from 1 to 1, subtracting 4 would not work. So this is probably a combination of 2. And this is where it gets tricky and you get hung up and you say, I can't figure it out. You're going to learn how to do this in just a little bit. So let's look at the next page. Let's look at this same set of points and let's find the slope. And to find the slope, remember it's the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. So if I go from 1 to 3, how much did I increase? I increased 2. And if I go from 0 to 2, what did I do? I increased 2. So the difference in the y's, remember that's called delta y, over the difference in the x's, all I have to do is say difference in the y's was 2, the difference in the x's was 2, that means the slope was 1. Okay? And the y-intercept, well, remember when we first started? When x is 0, that's where it crosses paths with y. So the y-intercept is 1. That's interesting. Let's check out the next one. Let's use these 2 points for the heck of it. 0 to 2. Did I increase? Yep, plus 2. If I go from 0 to 1, did I increase? Yep, plus 1. So my slope is 2 over 1. And what's my y-intercept? 0, 0. Crosses paths on the origin, just 0. All right. And this guy, tricky one. Let's pick 2 easy points. Let's just pick these 2. 13 and 16, that's plus 3. And 5 to 6, that's plus 1. So rise over run, 3 over 1. My slope is 3. And what's my y-intercept? Ooh, geez, they don't give me x is 0 anywhere. But let's follow the pattern. What's exactly between -1 and +1? It's 0. So let's do the same thing over here. What's exactly between -5 and 1? And if you need to do a little trick, let's just list the numbers. -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1. You could also find the average of the 2. But I could say, let's cross out 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Let's cross out one more and one more. The median, or the middle number, or the average, is -2. So this is really cool. And this is when it all comes together to find patterns. What was the pattern here that we said on the other page? We said the pattern was adding 1. Well, check it out. The y-intercept is 1. What did we say the pattern was up here? We said multiplying by 2, multiplying by 2, multiplying by 2. Well, the slope is 2. That's the multiplier. And this pattern that we couldn't figure out, let's see if the slope is the multiplier and the y-intercept is what we're adding and subtracting. I think we just might be multiplying by 3 and subtracting 2. Let's try it. From 1 to 1, what's 1 times 3? 3. And then subtract 2, you get back to 1. That's awesome. Let's try 5. 5 times 3 is 15, minus 2 is 13. And 6 times 3 is 18, minus 2 is 16. So to find the pattern of basically any two numbers or any number machine, find the slope and then find the y-intercept. The slope is where the slope is the multiplier and the y-intercept is what you're adding and subtracting. Confused? Let's do some examples. All right, so let's check this out. I got a graph here, and I'm just going to label my points, or I'm going to call these out. This is -2, -4. This is -1, -1. This is 0, 2. And this is 1, 5. There's another point, but I don't need to use it. All right, and it says, can you find the pattern to get from X to Y? So how do I go from this to this, this? And let's say that I'm confused. I can't figure it out. Well, let's find the slope of this. I could do it with my points, or I could just look up here and say my rise over my run. And it doesn't matter which 2 points you pick. So my rise is 1, 2, 3. So my rise is 3, and my run is 1. So my slope is 3 over 1. If I want to, I could do it here too. Plus 3 plus 1, 3 over 1, rise over run. And my y-intercept, I can just look right here. Where does it cross paths with y? It crosses right on 2. So check this out. The slope is the multiplier. I'm multiplying by 3. And the y-intercept is what I'm adding and subtracting. I'm adding 2. So let's try it. What's 0 times 3? 0. Plus 2 is 2. There it is. The number machine, here's the trick, right? You can figure out any number machine. Take 1, multiply it by 3. You get 3. Plus 2 is 5. So the pattern is times 3 plus 2. Pretty cool. All right, so we have something called slope-intercept form that you want to put all functions into. That just means solve for y, put the x term first, and then put your constant last. Remember, x is your input. Remember the burgers, right? How many burgers do you want? They were $1.99. Okay. X is your input. How many burgers you want? Your output is the price, right? Or y. Your slope is m, right? It's the coefficient of x. It's what you're multiplying the input by. And your b is your y-intercept, your constant. It's what comes last. And if we're talking about patterns, it's what you're adding or subtracting to the input. So it's basically this easy. The coefficient of x is the slope, okay? And the y-intercept is the constant. So there you go. So the pattern here is multiplying by 3, adding 4. Let's check out here. What's the slope here? Be careful. If it's a negative x, there's an imaginary -1 there. So my slope is -1, and my y-intercept is my constant, -3. So the pattern is multiplying by -1, subtracting 3. Now the slope here, this is not in y-intercept form because I have to solve for y, and that's super easy. Just divide everything by 2 to isolate it. And you get y equals -4 divided by 2 is -2x minus 4. So what's your slope? -2. And what's your y-intercept? -4. And that's how you basically do the third page of your assignment. The coefficient of x, or the number in front of x, is the slope. And the y-intercept is the constant, or what comes last. All right, so let's do this the old way. Let's graph the old way. Remember how you had to use nice numbers like 0, 1, and 2? If I substitute 0 in, I get 1. If I substitute 1 in, I get 2 times 1 plus 1 is 3. And I'm going to look for a pattern. Look at 0, 1, 2, 1, 3. Can you guess what that last number is going to be? 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. Yeah. So if I graphed it, I get 0, 1, 1, 3, and 2, 5. That's graphing the old way. Then you take your line. That's what the line would look like. Okay. And then they get harder, though. Remember when we had fractions and those fractions problems were tough? If I use 0, I get -2. And there's 0, -2. And check it out. That's the y-intercept, just like over here. This is the y-intercept. It's where it crosses y. But if I substitute 1 in, I'm going to get a fraction. So I'm going to pick 2. If I put 2 in, I get 1 minus 2, which is -1. And I'm going to follow the pattern. Check this out. 0, 2, 4, -2, -1, 0. I think that's right. So let's graph that. 2, -1, and 4, 0. That's what my line should look like. Yes, that's graphing the old way. Now check this out. This is awesome. Graphing the new way. Watch how much quicker it is. What's the slope of this bad boy? It's 2. What's the y-intercept? 1. All you have to do is start on the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 1. And from this point, I'm going to do my slope. And what's my slope? It's 2 over 1. Remember, slope is rise over run. So rise 1, 2, run 1. I'm just going to keep doing it. Rise 1, 2, run 1. Rise 1, 2, run 1. Or the cool thing, I could say a negative divided by a negative is also a positive. So I could go down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1. And you can see it's all the same thing. So I can graph anything super quick using that pattern. So let's do this last one. Start on the, well, identify what your slope is. It's 1/2. My y-intercept is -2. So start on the y-intercept. Right there, -2. And now my slope is rise over run, 1 over 2. So that means rise 1, run 2. Rise 1, run 2. Rise 1, run 2. Or I could go negative over a negative. Down 1 to the left 2. And there's the line. All right, so that's awesome, guys. You can graph just like that, a new way. And knowing this knowledge, is that right? Or having this knowledge, you can graph. You can figure out patterns for number machines. And if you can identify patterns, you can make predictions of what's going to happen in the future. And that's what weathermen do. That's what people do in the stock market. They look for patterns and see if they can make predictions. And the people that are smart enough to do that are the ones that are making the big money. So hopefully you guys will all be making big money someday. And it's going to take you a little bit to figure this stuff out, but stick with it and you're going to do awesome. All right? Good luck, guys.